It's day 3 of the COP21 vlogs. Yesterday I talked about the science of climate change, and today I want to talk about why some people still deny climate change, and I want to do my share of debunking. So if you watched yesterday's episode, and I hope you did, if you did not, watch it, I hopefully convinced you that climate change is an established fact, and it is. All of our experiments, all of our observations, all of our theories, all of our models point to it. So I'm just going to accept as a fact from now on that climate change is real, because it is. I want to talk about why do some people still deny all those facts. And then, to start, there is obviously the intuitive reasons, and a lot of these are discussed in this video right here by Vice News. Go check that out. But I want to give a brief overview and my take on it. First of all, so say you're a fossil fuel company or someone who's paid by the fossil fuel companies. You're making billions of dollars and things are going your way. This whole idea of climate change would kind of totally destroy your fortune and all. So you are going to want to say that climate change is not happening, and you're going to defend that with whatever you've got. So for some people it's advantageous that climate change wouldn't be a fact. So, I mean, what else can you expect? And something which I do often wonder about these people is, are they actually misunderstanding the science, or are they just pretending so that their means is made? So that's something I wonder, and I don't think we'll really know because these guys aren't telling anytime soon. And I think for especially the average person, out of no fault of their own, it's kind of hard to believe that, climate change is happening. Because as I said before, climate change is happening over a global scale, and it's happening pretty slowly, at least in terms of the course of a human lifetime. So something so big and so amazing, and something which doesn't necessarily seem as upfront as humans killing each other, people tend to either put it in the back burner or just ignore it altogether. And then there's the whole thing where, because of your political ideology or something, you just go in with that bandwagon. Yeah, so unfortunately there's actually this poll which found that 1 in 4 Americans are skeptical about climate change. Now, still we have a majority of people who understand that climate change is a fact, but 1 in 4 people, I mean, I want everyone to come in the same boat here, because clearly that 1/4 of people is somehow altering that progress. And it's kind of funny, some of these climate deniers, they use that fact as a reason to deny climate change, and that's just stupid. Like, no offense to the average Joe, but the average Joe isn't really as informed about what's happening out there. What he should look at is the 97% of published reports on climate change say that it's caused by humans and it's happening. So, clearly there are people who deny it, and they deny it for a lot of personal, important reasons. But what's actually interesting is looking at the psychology of how these guys deny climate change. So there's this course on EDX which really interested me even before I got involved in this whole climate thing, called Making Sense of Climate Science Denial. So really what the course does is it overviews the science of climate change. It tells you how denialists act, and it trains you on how to deal with denialists, I guess that's what we'll call them. So check that course out, but I'm going to use a couple of their materials because it's really good. They use the acronym FLICC, F-L-I-C-C, to describe the 5 characteristics of science denial. I want to go through them. First, there is fake experts. So, you'll have, for an example is the global warming petition project. It was actually a project where I think 33,000 experts signed a petition which said that climate change isn't happening, and the minimum degree you needed to sign this petition was a bachelor's in science. Now, okay, this was supposed to represent being reputable, but you didn't really have too many actual climate scientists signing this. You had computer scientists signing it, physicists signing it, etc., etc. And though I'm not debating these people's smarts, they aren't really on the front lines of this. And 33,000 people is about 0.3% of all of the environmental scientists out there. I might be getting these numbers slightly wrong, so forgive me on that, but it's the same ballpark. And part of this fake experts thing is the magnified minority. So that part of the reason why we still seem to be having disagreements among the American people on climate change is because we always have one person against another person in these debates. On TV, you might have like Bill Nye versus some other guy, but it's always 50-50. There isn't a debate. We know it's happening. So we're magnifying the minority. We're saying that because these 33,000 people signed on the petition project, for example, that means that there is a debate out there. The second one, L, is logical fallacies. So this is where biases or just general fallacies come in. Some of them are red herrings, for example. So there was this one meeting where this guy on the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology said how much CO2 has to be emitted for it to be harmful for humans. So this is like saying, how much CO2 does it have to be for me to stop breathing, because CO2 is a poison. That's a red herring. By red herring, we mean that you're focusing on something while we're worried about something else. We aren't worried about CO2 because of its direct impacts on our respiratory systems. We're worried about its impacts on the atmosphere, causing the globe to heat up. Another thing is misrepresentation, which is like saying that something is something else. Let me give you an example. People say, oh, they changed the name from global warming to climate change. That means that the globe isn't really warming and they were just making it up. That is a misrepresentation. They're saying that there is something which really isn't. They changed it from global warming to climate change because it was hard for the public to understand this whole global warming idea, because they saw it's really about different extremes. So we're making it more generic. We're saying climate change. The globe is warming, but the effects it has on people is hard for the general public to understand. And anyway, climate change and global warming have both been used. There's also jumping to conclusions. So saying because of this, there's that. There's the famous story of how Jim Inhofe, who's a Republican in Congress, brought a snowball to the Senate, and he said, it's snowing outside. There cannot be global warming. You are jumping to conclusions. You are not looking at the science. Here's the thing. The globe is warming, but the atmosphere is complicated. You may notice that. It might be really hot in one place on Earth, and it can be really, really cold on another place on Earth, because you have pockets of air moving everywhere. Increasing the temperature of the Earth doesn't just mean that everything is going to get hotter. That means that you have different movements, and you will have, on average, you're getting hotter. So, just because there's a snowball now doesn't mean that global warming isn't happening. It is warming, and your snow might be gone in a couple of years. Then there's also false dichotomy, which basically says it's kind of like a magnified minority where you're saying that there are two sides to an argument which there really aren't. Okay, so moving on. I is impossible expectations. So you're saying that it should be something which it cannot be. So for example, there's the snowball example. You're saying that because of global warming there should be no snow outside. That's not true. You're going to have a gradual increase, but that will happen eventually. There's also the saying that you might know from watching the weather that we use models a lot to predict how the weather works, because there's so many variables. It's better to have a computer keep track of it. So people say that models are unreliable. I mean, look at the weather, right? It's always wrong. Now that's impossible expectations. We cannot expect our models to be perfect, but they are good enough, and it seems like they're saying that climate change is happening. And on top of that, we have the actual experimental observational evidence out there. Next, there's cherry picking. So the idea is that you only use certain pieces of information and isolate them to bring your fact. So some examples are, and this is a really popular one, is that people say that global warming stopped in 1998. Now the reason why they say this is because there was a small flattening in that overall curve. So they're saying, okay, so because of that, there is no climate change. That is cherry picking, because they are looking at the rest. The overall trend is that it's going up, and that little flatness does not matter. Another thing which climate scientists say is that, climate deniers say, oh my god, is that there are places on Earth where glacier size is increasing. The climate scientists are saying that the glaciers are not increasing, so global warming is inconsistent. That's cherry picking, because there are a couple glaciers out there which are growing for their own reasons. Maybe they have a really optimal area. That does not make the whole truth wrong, which is that on average they are decreasing in size. There's another one which says that in some places global warming has benefited. Some places where people couldn't farm, they can now. So global warming is good, nothing to worry about, right? Cherry picking. Couple places are good does not mean that everyone's good. That's actually pretty bad for the rest of us. And then there's the final one. Conspiracy theories. Now, this is pretty easy to understand. Some of these guys say, oh, the climate scientists are saying that climate change is real so that they can get more research and they can fill their salaries, which is a conspiracy theory. That's not true. Some people say that Obama is using climate change as a political tool. That's a conspiracy theory. And by the way, these people who make these claims are often lobbied by these fossil fuel companies, so talk about making money for themselves. So how do you face climate denial? There is a method which I've seen in practice which kind of works. First what you do is that if someone says a myth, what you want to do is that you want to immediately state that myth, but not go any deeper into it, because the more you say it, the more the person's able to think about it. What you want to do is immediately fill that in with the fact. State the fact more than the myth. So then that gets that in there. You want to make it incontrovertible, which is pretty easy because science makes it incontrovertible. So state it, state this fact, and state what fallacy they're using, because then you can really pinpoint it. That's all the talking I'm going to do for today. But if you want to see some cool denying deniers in action, you should watch this video by Veritasium, which is about 13 misconceptions about global warming, and you should read a Guardian article about the biggest arguments which climate science deniers make and our answers to those down in the description. That's all I'm gonna make for today. Tomorrow I'm gonna deal with starting to deal with what do we do about it. If it's advantageous for these people, but for some people it isn't advantageous, how are we dealing with this? So I'm going to talk about, for 2 days in a row, the politics and the economics behind climate change. So I hope you enjoy that. I hope you like this video. Thanks for watching.